how do you know us, Nate? Why are you here?
Kelly and Pat are my neighbors.
Like
so I think I met
neighbors.
Pat first.
Well, how long have you guys been here for?
5 years now.
5 years.
No way.
Yeah, I know.
That's crazy.
I know. 5 years.
That's
Pat
hard to
met you
believe.
guys first. What fandoms are you into and stuff, Nate?
I like sci-fi and fantasy, but I'm also a big cult nerd, I guess. So I like lots
B
of
movies.
I like lots of B movies.
You've introduced us to a
80s
lot of very good
movies.
B movies.
Yeah.
Horror, some good
Horror.
Just weird movies. I mean, like Lynch stuff is weird, but this is like not artistic. It's just weird. Like, so I came across this movie called Making Mr. Right with John Malkovich. Blonde John Malkovich, where he makes like a robot clone of himself that's going to do the space program. Like
Always.
80s John Malkovich
always
with
in
fake
everything.
blonde hair.
No, he
Really?
should not be blonde. That's not.
I
okay.
bought it, like, so it's on its way. It may be here
I
tomorrow.
can't
I
wait.
can let you borrow it.
Like Tina Belcher says, like, I have my dorkism on
Right.
certain things. Whereas, like, I love some young adult fantasy novels.
Yeah.
I can go on and on about that stuff.
I mean, in the many times I've tried to convince Melissa to come with us to C2E2, my big pitch is always that the thing with...
In X-Files, I'm a huge X-Files
Yes!
nerd.
The thing with being a nerd is, like, there are so many fandoms that you could be in a super, super specific fandom. My thing is, if you're passionate about something, be
Right.
passionate about it.
Kelly was the first person I ever released my weird because all of my friends are like much more I love you all
Normies.
basic
Yeah,
in
we're
terms
weird.
of what their likes are, what their dislikes are. I have friends that are very into music and all of that stuff, but like I have a handful of friends that are just very like basic bitches in the
Right.
nicest
It
sense of the
happens.
term.
It happens.
Yeah.
So there's
like
nothing
the
wrong with it.
X-Files
I
shows.
literally was
Yeah.
watching, like, I was so excited for the X-Files to come back. I, like, texted Kelly. I was like, so
Yep.
here's my thing.
That was a big...
Love fucking
big
X-Files.
thing.
Like, I read fan fiction in high school. Like, I dressed up as Scully one year. Like, no one else got it. My other friend was a princess. Like,
Right.
that's...
Before we get into the episode, I wanted to discuss a topic, a general Twin Peaks topic. Emmy nominations came out, and I don't know about you guys, but the first thing I did was a control find for Twin Peaks, and there was nothing there. And at first, I was shocked and chagrined, but then I found out through Googling that Twin Peaks was not eligible this year. So Twin Peaks, not eligible, they were not snubbed. They will be eligible next year.
Probably the only one out of the four of us that Googled this.
But this brings up, before we start, warm-up discussion topic that I want to throw out there. So thinking about next year's Emmys, who, if anyone, from Twin Peaks would you want to be nominated for an Emmy?
Kyle MacLachlan. Like, he does such a good job.
He does an amazing job.
Like, you view him as two different characters. It's the whole, like, Orphan Black thing, where it's like, I'm not watching the same actor doing
Right.
everything. It's like, I have the different concepts of, like, this is how he looks, and this is how he acts, and this is what he looks like. Like, his face is different.
Right.
How about Richard Horne?
Eamon Farron. We're going to be talking a lot about Eamon Farron today, if I have my way. So I called it from his first scene.
It makes me so angry.
Melissa's so mad, but from
I'm
from his first scene, I said important character alert was the first thing I said about him. He was important. I knew it. He's special. He's Australian. He gave an awesome interview this week to vulture.com that you should all read. Interesting choice.
It's weird.
Who else? Anyone else?
Well, I feel like the other characters aren't as developed yet. I mean, Janie...
Andy?
Andy.
We haven't seen him
Andy
for... Oh, well,
Hawk.
not this...
We haven't seen Andy in a while now. Yes, you're
Yeah,
right.
but he's not doing anything special. He's just being Andy.
Yeah. I mean, so I think,
I'm kidding.
like, obviously David Lynch should get a nod. obviously, because he's
Yeah,
more than
that's
director.
true.
He
Yeah.
was sound designer. He was like
He's just done a lot.
creationer. Like there's you can't even
He
give him a
made
title.
What was like, oh, this is
Right.
the weird '90s thing,
And brought it through.
and
But
now it's like a weird, fucked up movie that
Yes.
we're watching week after week.
yes, and it's different. He's changing. He's trying to change how we watch TV. But actually, who I believe should absolutely get an Emmy, and this will be surprising to anyone who's listened to our full podcast, is Joanna DeRay, the casting director.
Oh,
So I've had kind of a love-hate relationship with Joanna DeRay. Casting director Emmys were only added as a category in the last couple years. And I do think it's long overdue because good casting is like 50 to 60% of the battle. But in this series, her casting challenge was monumental, and I think she rose to it. The cast is 214 actors, which is astonishing. 214 principal roles. She had to bring back old cast members. She had to build family units. So now it's like, I need to cast someone who looks like Sherilyn Fenn and is scary and has this going on. Like, so much criteria. I need to cast a blonde girl who's a little bit weird and funny, but also smoking hot. Like, every casting challenge she rose to, and I really think her presence has moved the series in a great direction. She's had some misses, probably driven by David Lynch, Krista Bell, but who plays Tammy. But I think otherwise she took on a massive undertaking and did it with flair and aplomb. And I would like to nominate her for an Emmy. That I could.
In all fairness, when I wrote on our Twitter about how fucking hate Tammy, there was a lot of response about, yep, hate her too. She is
Yeah.
awful. And I was like, yeah.
Nate,
all
how do you
right,
feel
we're not
about
alone.
Tammy? Do you like?
I'm definitely not a fan.
Yeah, I've really tried to like her, but I can't.
Yeah, I agree. There's just something unnatural about her.
Her acting ability.
Yeah.
It's like she's trying.
It kind of pulls you out of the scene a little bit.
Yeah, because it's
whenever
like you're
she's in
watching
it.
someone trying
Right.
to act.
I think
and
you
you're
kind
like,
of you get used to her like,
Right.
as it progresses, but it is like she's
Yeah.
kind of a sticks out, right?
Yes, she had her best scene this episode, but definitely
One
sticks
little-
out. Yeah.
No, if you
So-
watch it too many times, it loses its flair.
And like listeners, if you haven't guessed, this is a super special episode. It's going to be extra long and extra special. Before we dive into the episode, I just want to get Nate. What is your feelings on Twin Peaks thus far? Like, where are you at?
I mean, I saw the first season when I was in high school, so dating myself there a little bit, but
It's all right. It's a safe
it's
space.
interesting. Now I don't know if I watched. I think maybe like a lot of the public, I stopped watching the second season, and then I
Right,
think
once they revealed the killer.
Right, and then I think I have been through the series maybe in the last 5 years. I think I watched through it on my own, and then when they were when the new season was coming out or the new series, I pulled Ryan into it with me, and we sat and watched. And it's,
Ryan definitely did not get on the bandwagon.
right, he was not.
Which is
helping
why
me.
he's not here today.
Right. I don't know. Like I've enjoyed it, but it does require a lot of concentration, and oftentimes I'll get home and
Yeah.
I'll flip it on at like 9:00 at night, and like 5-10 minutes, and I'm just like, oh man, no, I can't. do that.
Right.
Now, in all fairness, like I tried to watch it on my own before we came up with this concept, and I was like, all right, well,
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'll just watch something else in between and go back to
Yeah.
episode
Right.
2, and then
Right.
came up with this where it's like, no, let's watch it all the way through. Like, I don't know what to expect,
Yeah.
which is much helpful. It's more helpful because otherwise I think I would tune out and not
Yeah.
pay as much attention.
I think based on, what we've heard about David Lynch and transcendental meditation, some interviews from Kyle MacLachlan, the interview I read this week of Eamon Farron, I think David Lynch is trying to change the way that we digest TV. I think he sees this direction we're going with this binge watching, able to be on your phones or not really actively engaged. Like, it's like a McDonald's fast food, but it's great. I mean, like, TV is the best it's ever been. I think he wants us to slow down and pay attention, and he's trying to change the pace and trying to bring awareness. And so that's where I agree with you. There are times when I'm not in the headspace to watch Twin Peaks. Like, you have to be in a certain state of mind.
You have to pay attention. It's not something you can watch while you're reading the news on your iPad.
No.
And
you gotta be really involved.
It requires patience and focus.
And I've prefaced, like, shows that I've watched being like, well, it's good to have, like, on the back, like, it's a good... Sometimes I work from home, and, like, sometimes it's like I need some noise in the background that I'm not really paying attention to, and this is a good one.
Right.
So it's like, this is not one of those.
No, because then we're fast-forwarding or rewinding to get numbers, and like I said a couple weeks ago, when you are throwing so many different potential layers and we don't know for sure what's the driving through line, we're trying to pay attention to everything. It's making everything super heavy with significance, and you can't afford to miss a moment. You don't know what's going to come back and be the most important thing, like the pivotal moment. So,
like, I don't know if you noticed in this episode how many red things there were.
Oh,
like,
my God.
sheets, towels.
And we had a red door with Dougie's, which is always a thing.
It makes it a thing, but it makes it more a thing, I feel like, this time, because everything was really, like, David Lynch is like, pay attention to this. Like, how much more red shit can I throw at you?
So we start the very first scene, and I thought this was, like, if I had to kind of rank my episodes, this would definitely be in the top 3. I thought this was a great episode.
It was good.
It set up a lot of movement for certain characters and certain plots that I think will be incredibly important. The very first scene, Richard goes to Miriam's trailer, which Miriam is the very kind-hearted kindergarten, I don't know if she said kindergarten, but she's a teacher.
She's a teacher,
It's interesting from the way...
who loves pie.
Yes, and
from
she's so
R&R,
sweet.
Which I think they'll circle back
Yes, because we had Shelley and...
I thought she kind of looks like Heidi, the waitress.
Yeah. She does, yes, but she's not related necessarily.
They're not related, though.
She's the one, though, like, she lives in that trailer with, like, the really thin
Fat
doors.
Trout.
Like,
New Fat Trout. What's interesting about this scene, am I the only one who felt like Richard and Miriam had a relationship in the past? By the way that he approached her? Because he was like... She said, "Don't come any closer, Richard." Like, he had approached her before.
They had a relation. Like,
I don't know if it's a romantic. I know they know each other,
but it's like
I think they went to school together.
They grew up through the years.
They probably grew up together,
which is a very intimate relationship. We've talked about this before with someone who you've known from childhood and what that, like, how weird that is.
Why do you think his face was so clearly reflected in her screen door?
To be a Bob reference, absolutely. To draw our attention to. So
that's a good catch. I didn't catch.
Yeah, so they have him reflected in her screen door, which is so. Any mirrors and reflections are a Bob or Black Lodge thing, and I think now Richard Horne is supposed to be like the embodiment of evil. He's the new Bob. They have him specifically perpetrating violence only to women and children. He has not yet committed violence against a man. So we're supposed to see him as a total monster. I thought this scene was a great setup to the episode. And really this episode is, if you had to say kind of the through line, the story of Richard.
And then they go right to another abusive man.
Oh, yeah.
Abuse is definitely a theme in this episode.
To Shelley's daughter's place.
Which it's such a mirror of when Shelley's getting beaten by Leo that it's like, you're just like, Jesus Christ.
Which is also a question, who is
Becky's father?
Right.
We were texting. The tagline of the new season is, "Who's your daddy?" Twin Peaks, who's your daddy? Who's your daddy, Richard Horne? Who's your daddy, Becky Burnett? Right. Like, we don't know who Becky's dad is.
It was Donna in the first go around.
Right, yeah, Donna's
Because she didn't
parentage
know.
was the big
Oh,
question.
yeah.
Which now it seems
So
like
then
who fucking
underlying-
cares about Donna's dad?
Donna's dead.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah. Laura Flynn Boyle, what are you doing with your life?
Right.
No one knows.
Right.
She couldn't even play Donna because her
I'm
face is all
glad that
messed
she
up.
wasn't
Face looks
involved.
So weird now.
I'm glad.
It's true.
And I would, if
She
they
would have
were
to be
going to
in
bring
LA.
Donna back, I'm Team Moira Kelly. I would
Uh-oh.
prefer Moira
Yeah.
Kelly.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah, I would prefer more. Wouldn't you say Moira Kelly was better in Fire Walk with Me?
Yes, because maybe I just hate Laura Flynn Boyle in a weird way.
I'm not saying Laura Flynn Boyle was bad. I think she did what she was supposed to do, but Moira Kelly brought a whole layer
Yeah.
that wasn't there before that I really, really appreciated.
I'm gonna get some more wine.
Yeah, just bring the bottle. So abuse, definitely a theme. What I love about Twin Peaks always is this sharp juxtaposition between super harsh and very sweet nostalgia. And we have that in the first two scenes because initially we have this scene with Richard brutally beating and killing Miriam, and then we pivot to Carl playing the guitar. The next scene is one of those scenes that I think is a transcendental meditation, pay attention, transitional scene that is, I've noticed now that David Lynch will put these scenes as kind of like palate cleansers between other scenes where it's about let's, as you transition, get you in a state of heightened consciousness. So there's a scene with Rodney Mitchum and Candy. Candy is one of the three pink ladies, as I've been calling them, the three girls from the casino who are all wearing matching, kind of Marilyn Monroe-esque pink outfits. And Candy's the central one who kind of takes on a bigger role in this episode. This scene has some great music playing in the background. It's very quiet. It's very deliberate. It's extremely choreographed. She
Very
is
Lynchy.
attempting to kill a fly and ends up hitting Rodney Meacham and feels very remorseful about it. And she's carrying a red handkerchief. So Red Theory, Melissa, tell us about Red Theory.
There's just a lot of red. I don't know really what it symbolizes, but I feel like it symbolizes something. I don't know what yet.
Yes. Oh, we kind of skipped
But
actually
here's
the
my-
red mug that gets thrown by Stephen Burnett when
Right.
him and Becky Burnett have their big conflict,
It tends
abusive
to be
scene.
Something happening. I don't
Right.
know, but like then
Big events, maybe.
And certainly
Maybe.
Twin Peaks is not the first to use red as like a symbol of
Right.
evil. It's been in Sixth Sense. It's been in a lot of different movies. Yes, but we did forget the first instance of red is the cup being thrown
Right.
when Becky Burnett and Stephen Burnett are having their domestic dispute that so closely mirrors, of course, Leo and Shelley.
But my question to the group is: have you ever tried to kill a fly with a remote? And when it lands
or a
on-
handkerchief.
Right.
I mean, clearly she's not all there, right?
Right.
Like I get kind of the whipping it around, like get out, get away. But like if it lands on someone you will assume love
Right.
because of her reaction later on, you wouldn't maybe hit them in the fucking face with a remote.
But see, now I wonder, and I'm always giving Lynch more credit, maybe than he deserves. David Lynch, if you're there, hi. My name's Kelly. I'm a big fan. I wonder if there's a bit of an analogy here about when you are blindly into someone and you're protecting them, you kind of don't see the forest for the trees. You almost don't see that what you're doing is actually hurting them, not helping them. And I think that's sort of the metaphor that's happening with her smacking the fly. And then this is also another, I've got this theory about PTSD as a big through line here. She certainly seems very PTSD victim in this, or abuse victim at least, because she
has
says
some,
that.
like, hardcore daddy issues.
Yeah,
Like-
it's like, because I think what happens with PTSD, you can go for years and be okay and everything can be fine, and then something triggers and then that sort of unlocks this whole world. And so for Candy, for some reason, perpetrating this violence against Rodney, however unintentional, kind of awoke something in her where for the rest of the episode she's not quite right. And they notice it and talk about it. So I wonder if this is kind of driving back to this idea of like, we are not noticing the people around us who need help and who have legitimate issues that we should be addressing.
Right, because the next scene that we see with Candy is her just sobbing and sobbing.
Right.
Everyone's just going about their normal
and
business.
no one knows how to interact with her. Which is really true when anyone suffered a trauma. You know, when you go to a funeral or we don't know how to offer comfort in that way when there's grief in that way because so it's like, anyway.
Right.
Not to get so like deep, but I do think there's an element of like.
About like, I just went through a breakup with old podcast co-host
who's
Tom.
In the Black Lodge. But good Tom's in the Black Lodge.
My
evil Tom's roaming about.
Some of my best friends, we don't deal with emotions. Like, we don't hug it out. We don't talk about our feelings. We just are like, maybe we should just have a glass of wine and bury this down. And my one friend came up to hug me, and she's like, sorry, and it was like she's like, I'm sorry, I just gave you the most awkward hug, and I was like, I know, and then she's like, oh, BTW, Dad has cancer, and we're like, what? And she's like, it's fine, let's not talk about it because it's weird and it's emotions, and it's just like, that's just how like some people are, where it's just like, you're crying,
right? And
my
that's where
philosophy
I think
is like, you want drinks?
When you see someone have an unnecessarily large emotional response to something small, it's typically because that something small triggered something in them that corresponded to something big.
And I'm a big crier. Like, I will cry at anything.
Which is just,
all the time.
You're in touch with your emotions, and that's a good thing.
Yeah. I'm a roller coaster of emotions. Someone at work tells me I'm not doing a good job, tears. Just tears.
I'm right there with you, Chica. Always.
Boyfriend breaks up with me, I am so angry. I'm just angry. It's a weird thing.
It's a urge to kill rising.
Yeah. I think like this Candy scene is interesting because we'll never get answers on the backstory of Candy, but I think David Lynch, I'm starting to see, and it's weird because as being a fan and deeply analyzing his work for a long time, I'm just now seeing that his work is very experientially based. It's about in the moment what's happening. And I think there's a lot of like secrets, and there's a lot of, we won't know what made Candy react that way. It's more interesting to just see that she had an unnecessarily large reaction and to speculate as we are about what might cause that reaction.
Part of the mystery.
Right. And
in all fairness, like, yeah, I never think I'm going to know why Candy cried during that scene because...
Yeah.
And it's like,
it's not necessary to the plot.
Let's not talk about it. Like,
but it drives everything. It just adds layers that you make it more interesting.
Yeah.
I think, go ahead, baby.
Then it's great later on when she goes and gets the Anthony sing.
Well, she's still sort of in her weird
bothers
zone.
Me though too, because it's like, so when we first see the ladies like a few episodes ago, they were in that same state that they are when they're in the casino at the end scene that we see them in. Where it's like kind of a daze, like it's the stare up.
Listeners, it's like the observation room where it's all the cameras in the casino and the pink ladies are against the wall sort of lounging, and Candy's doing sort of a thing with her hand that's kind of like on air currents.
Right.
That we mentioned the first time we saw it, that we were like, there's a weird thing. There's these... And she did stand out because the other girls were just standing there, and Candy's the one sort of like in the moment experiencing
Was she doing that? I thought she was like going, like, tickling her breast.
No, she was like moving her hand.
I don't know what she was.
And listeners, great in a audio media
don't typically do that, but I just thought maybe she was like...
Not in public, at least.
Right.
I totally do that, but then again, I've got
she was probably doing that.
sternum
she was
stuff.
I'm sure, yeah.
But then they all looked really so like the Candy that we just saw where she's sobbing, like she's in a completely different translucent state where
Well,
it's
did you say about they drugged her? Because
Yeah,
I hadn't
they might have
considered that,
drugged her.
but I thought that was
Yeah.
a great point.
Yeah.
And that's
That
why
they
she
drugged
was-
her.
Yeah.
like they have to
It
be on
looked like
something.
she was like, they were like, we don't know how to deal with this crazy female's emotions, so let's just give her some pills to numb her out, you know? And like, I thought that was
it's a weird scene because she was so emotional, she was so in herself, and then she's just like, oh,
she's numb. I mean, she seems
you want
numb.
me to go get someone?
Right.
What?
And now
Okay.
I always go back and forth because when you look at David Lynch's wives in the series, you know, they're
I'd love to bring up
shrews.
the wives.
They are all shrews. You're
Right.
right.
Like
He
has
doesn't
some
like
issues there.
he doesn't like marriage. So it made me, for a while I had this theory. I was like, oh no, does David Lynch hate women? And because there's so much abuse against women in this series, and that has really been remarked upon by everyone, there's a lot of abuse against women. Like, is that what he's going for? But I think it's ultimately going to be the victim's triumph in the end. I think this is a setup where we're starting to see the pattern between all these abuse victims that are women. Because we've got Becky Burnett.
I don't think he's celebrating it.
No,
No.
he's not celebrating it. And not that I
Right.
think anyone would do that, but, you know, you do have directors who are chauvinists and they just can't, like, take that away from anything they do. Like, everything. Like, I have a love-hate relationship with Joss Whedon. I love Firefly, but, man, I think he hates women a little bit. Like, he is just a little rough towards women. I don't want to get on a whole segue, but some directors that you would be surprised. We talked about this today. Nerdy men can be the harshest towards women. You'd expect them to be very loving and
They're the
understanding.
trolls.
Of like a
A lot of them are
Yeah.
the internet trolls.
Right.
No,
you
I
know?
took a BuzzFeed quiz that says, based on my cocktail preference, I really love sweet nerds. And I was
Right.
like, oh, that's kind of true. And then Kelly's just like,
Yep.
they're the most judgmental.
They're so, and I was telling Melissa, I'm always having to like prove my nerd credibility to men. Women will right away accept, like, you say you're a nerd, I believe you're a nerd, sweetheart.
Right.
Men are like,
I'm
tell
not
me
gonna go into
about
it.
the, you know, specific games and anime things that you like.
Also
And it's like, geez, dude, like, believe me, there's nothing cool about being the drama club president in high school. Like, I
Let-
promise you, I'm legitimately a nerd.
Let her in the club.
Like, I brought
Sitting outside going,
Pat
huh.
Brian K. Vaughan, listeners. Pat didn't know who Brian K. Vaughan was until me.
I don't
I was
So-
just
I
a
know
Lord
who
of the
that is
Rings
right
nerd
now.
before.
Yeah, he's the biggest graphic novel author right now. Neil Gaiman. Pat didn't know about Neil Gaiman till me. So, listeners, shut your mouths. I'm a legit nerd. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, nerd men
not.
can
I'm pretty
be the
basic.
worst.
I have a good basic layer. Now, a
You've
little
got your
bit of
fandom.
nerd.
and that's
you're
what's
a
important.
YA nerd.
I'm
Two
very good
letters.
into the YA.
Two
YA.
letters.
Which-
YA.
I don't know if it's
Why? So we have the Meachums pretty well covered. We get into, let's talk Dougie. Let's talk Dougie
yeah.
plot.
Dougie sex.
Usually I don't want to talk Dougie, but today I want to talk
Well,
Dougie.
let's also applaud Janie E.
Janie
for
E.
fucking taking Dougie to the doctor eventually, though nothing really happened.
I know. I
The
just
doctor
Literally,
so
the
strange.
doctor called her.
The doctor
perfect.
wants to have sex with Dougie.
Right.
He's in
Like,
perfect
the doctor's
shape.
like, you lost some weight.
Right. We were all
Everything's
thinking
really
that
good.
when
Like,
it came
you're
on.
looking
Right,
really
Pat?
good.
That's right.
You're like, damn, Dougie looks good with
I
his
mean,
shirt off. I was not
maybe-
expecting that. I don't
Right.
think his wife was either, obviously.
No.
Obviously,
So-
because she's like, wait a minute, Dougie has lost weight. He's just not flowing in a green suit.
Well,
right
and that's
now.
what confused me. Maybe I'm a deviant, listeners, but I have always wondered how Janie E. has not tried to jump Dougie's bones previously. Like,
Maybe because he just parrots back everything she says, and it gets kind of creepy.
that's
when
true.
it's
You might be like,
Right.
stroke
Aw.
victim.
I mean,
Here's a-
exactly.
Here's a mannequin, but like
yeah.
with a
or
voice
like
box.
a coma victim.
Yeah.
Like,
Like,
Well, she was mad at him at first. He missed Sonny John's... what's his
Sonny
name?
Jim's.
Sonny Jim's birthday
God,
party,
everyone
so-
hates Sonny Jim too. I feel like Tammy and Sonny Jim are the most hated.
Really?
I actually don't mind saying.
No, I don't mind him at all. But like,
I think he's weirdly Hispanic for the
Which
character
makes-
of
yeah,
these two
no
Well, because
white,
that's because
red,
Doug,
waspy looking people.
Dougie is a manufactured thing from a grape or piece of glass.
you know,
I
a
don't know what
golden
he's
pea.
made.
Come on, Pat. You've been a part of this podcast for a while now. If you're not going to pull your weight, a golden pea.
A golden pea, yes. That's it.
Yeah, I do like the Janie E and Ducky reconnection scene where it's also funny that she's like having, it seems like intensive orgasms while Kyle MacLachlan's just chilling.
It was very
He's
like
eating fucking cake.
Right.
it was like
Eating
regarding Henry.
He was clearly happy, though.
Yes, he was
after it
good.
over,
And then
everything.
afterwards,
Right.
I was saying he looked the
Happy
most
boy.
lucid there that I think we've seen him in
Yeah.
a while. Like he was kind of.
The
I feel
last-
like that
his-
scene where she says I love you," and he's like "I love you." That was kind of the
Yeah.
most with it that he
The
is.
last two lines he had when he said answers in the previous episode, he also sounded more lucid.
Right.
Like, he didn't say, like,
I do think.
the
Like he
first...
said
yeah,
it.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, he... Yeah,
was
he
more
was like,
like,
answers.
Right. Well, we have noticed
I
More
love
like
that.
declarative.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a different
Case file.
tonation when it's Dougie and when it's Agent Cooper kind of breaking through. I do think there's going to kind of come to head this thing of Cooper realizing who he is and becoming Special Agent Dale Cooper, and then also remembering Dougie's past and feeling a connection to Naomi Watts. I think that's going to kind of be a conflict for him.
Right.
I mean, it would be stupid to not make that a storyline, because it's an interesting choice to have him kind of layer on these memories from this person he's been plopped into, and then take that and remember Agent Cooper's memories as well. And I think
Right.
what would be interesting, and everyone knows I'm the biggest Audrey fan, so I can't be trusted, but what would be really interesting would be to bring in Audrey at this point as the
Polygamous
person
style.
for evil Cooper / former Cooper as a foil against Janie E. Where now he's kind of got this, do I go to my
The
one
blonde
child
or the
with...
brunette?
And really he might have 3 children, because I still think he might have a kid with Diane too. Because the beginning of the episode...
I really think that there's a bunch of evil Coops
So,
spawn
Yeah.
out there.
very
like-
first sentence in Twin Peaks, almost very first in season 3, the giant says, remember 4:30, Richard and Linda, 2 birds with 1 stone. We've met a Richard who's very significant. So obviously the Richard in that sentence is, remember Richard, the kid that your doppelganger created when he raped Audrey in a coma. Go take care of that situation. But then who the fuck is Linda? We've had a Linda in the series. She was a peripheral character in Fat Trout Farms, but that doesn't really fit. So I think Linda is Diane's daughter from rape from Cooper, and that the giant is saying, pay attention to your 2 children from rape, Richard and Linda.
Yeah.
She got a lot
Could be.
from that sentence. So
And I've
Right.
been right thus far.
Well, speaking of parents and children, though, we should talk about the Jacoby rants.
Oh,
Like,
the
that's
Jacoby,
some-
you get a lot of stuff from the Jacoby rants.
no wolf
But
for
the
us.
end is where he mentions every parent wants
Yes.
to save their child.
Ah, you stole my big realization.
Well, go
But it's
ahead
true.
and explain it. I just wanted to get there.
That's
So, the other thing with Lynch that he does in this series is that he'll place giant revelations and he'll disguise them in kind of gibberish scenes. And I think 2 of the major vessels
But has
of...
that been proven yet? Really? Yet?
About the Jacoby thing?
Yeah.
No, not
No,
necessarily.
no.
This is just a theory. But we
Okay.
know from
Nadine
past
does have a
series-
a silent drape runner store, though.
Yes.
That's proven.
That is amazing.
That is amazing. That was such a big
and then
payoff.
she also has, which I only caught in the second round, one of the golden shovels that Jacoby
Yes.
painted. Just
She loves
dangling in the
Jacoby.
window.
Shipping alert, Nadine and Jacoby. Well, I think that what Lynch will sometimes do is he'll take some character who's like spouting gibberish and put like a kernel of truth in that. I call it a kernel of truth and a popcorn of lies.
Oh.
And in the Jacoby, and so this
Trademarked.
happens, I know, right? I won't tell you who originally inspired me with that phrase. But, yeah, but we're not going to say it on the podcast. So I think Jacoby and the log lady in particular in this episode, because holy shit. We could
Log
spend
lady.
35 minutes just dissecting every word of the log lady scene and trying, because like it's so big. But they're both, and even Johnny, now I'm like, things Johnny says matters. But things that you don't think matter, and they come back. In the Jacoby scene, we've been set up that Jacoby has this, I feel like, probably very left political podcast that is sharing his views, and a lot of it is jibber jabber, and then he says one or two things that are big, and one thing that really struck me was he said, pay attention, every parent wants to save their child. And I was like, okay, well, pay attention is David Lynch literally saying, pay attention,
and
audience.
then there was a quick scene with Coop and Sonny Jim and Janie.
Right.
Doing it?
No, this was
Just
they
like
were leaving the
interacting.
house.
But I think that was,
yeah.
so it was
Where
like,
they
yes,
kiss
of
It was
course,
just a real
Bye.
quick scene, yeah.
Sonny Jim, but I think that's actually about evil Coop and Richard.
It could be...
Because that's the father-son
both,
relationship that's going to
True,
be...
because now evil Coop, or Dougie Coop, which is good Coop, has
Right,
a son
Sonny Jim, who's very sweet
who
and
knows,
lovely.
like, who he's kind of bonded with, even as weird, comatose Dougie Coop.
Right. Yeah, so I think there's a lot of
He's
father-son
traumatized.
stuff. I mean, there's a lot of parents-kids stuff in this series in
Does
general.
Lynch have any children?
He does. The kid who's the magician.
Oh, creepy magician.
Creepy
That's
magician boy
right.
is
That
David
is a
Lynch's
little
kid.
Lynch.
And a daughter, Jennifer Lynch, who was in a movie with Eamon Farron, who plays Richard Horne.
Oh, wow.
So
Good research.
he's got
I
kids.
know. Thank goodness someone's doing this.
I mean, when I say I'm obsessed, it's a little bit of an understatement, listeners. But yeah, I think the statement there, pay attention. Every parent wants to save their child. In a lot of our past episodes, we've been kind of trying to figure out what is Evil Coop's motive besides trying to stay out of the Black Lodge, besides trying to stay alive. What does he want? Like, does he just want to, create chaos for chaos' sake? Is he just an evil person? Or does he have something that he's driving towards? So the idea of him trying to save his child, which would be Richard, gives him more motivation and makes him a more interesting character. And that's a story I actually am like, oh, that's
Right.
great. That makes sense. I think that's gotta be...
It's a little more gray, too.
Yeah.
It's not like, at least it gives him, like, a better purpose than just causing chaos, but...
Right. Right, which is always better. I always like a villain with a great motive. No one likes a villain who's just tie someone to a train tracks and explain your evil scheme and have no reason behind
an
it.
anti-villain where you kind of get where they're coming from.
Right.
Where it's like, well, yeah, if this guy shot up your parents too, like, you would be angry and you would want
Right.
revenge. So,
And I
get
do-
it.
Right.
But
How does
Batman?
Bob get pushed out of a vessel? Does he just stay in that? I mean, because
See,
he
now-
stayed in...
That's a really good question.
That's a
I
good
think
question.
Bob hasn't necessarily been pushed out of the Cooper vessel, but we do have semi-definitive proof that Evil Coop can toggle sort of between Bob and not Bob. Like, he
No,
has
we're
more
pretty
control.
certain that he's out of Bob. Or Bob
Oh, that's
is
right,
out
because
of
he
Coop
got...
now.
Yeah, you're right.
Because
Yeah,
of when
that
he
happened
died,
in
and
the,
then like
Really?
In episode 8, the weird
Yeah.
one that you did.
there was
Oh.
this scene
Yeah.
where everyone's eating Evil Coop. It's really
Huh.
Yeah.
Homeless coal miners are digging out of Coop.
there's a
Zombie
bunch of
coal miner Doug Pez.
homeless zombie coal miners
And
that
they-
just like
They take
attack
an egg of Bob out of it.
As I often say, if I had a nickel for
Really?
every...
That's pretty
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, it gets really intense.
Obviously, I missed like the one episode I should have caught.
No, but actually, I mean,
And
Watch
that was
episode
the
8.
whole-
that's
for
arguable.
Sure.
Do they at all use? I'm sorry. Do
No,
they
go
at
ahead,
all use
Uncle
the
Nate.
projection of the actor who played Bob?
They
Oh,
do.
They have.
fucking
Okay.
time.
But,
That's
and
what
you know,
they're doing,
one of
yeah.
our biggest
Okay.
problems was the first time they used it, they really, like, dumbed it down for us and spoon-fed us.
Uh-huh.
When we don't need that. Because, like, what's interesting about Twin Peaks that is unique to no other series on television has this except for Twin Peaks. David Lynch is like, fuck you if you decided to just start watching Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
They have
Yeah.
a zero desire to pull in an audience who has not seen the
Right.
series.
Yeah.
Like, that's not possible. You could not find enjoyment out of the series other than from just being like, it's weird and scenic and beautiful and there's some good bands and, you know, but like,
Yeah.
really, you have to have watched the previous series. You have to watch Fire Walk with Me. You have to be a David Lynch fan. And he's like, yep, deal with it. Like, I'm not going to make it easy for you.
Not fucking around.
No. And the fact that it has gotten, the more I read about it, like, it has gotten critical acclaim.
Yeah.
You know, it's, I think, going to be a prediction, listeners. It's going to be an Emmy darling next year. I actually think it's going to get a lot of nominations.
I hope so, but because it's at the beginning of the Emmy now.
Yeah,
it's
that's
like,
true.
that's
The
always
season that it
hard.
comes
Kind
in
of
is...
gets buried.
Yeah, but David
All
Lynch
the
will
shit
get
that
nominated
happens.
for sure. Kyle MacLachlan will get nominated
have
for
to.
sure. I mean, like, it's a love letter.
The fact that every actor wants to be in Twin Peaks, even though
Everyone,
it's not
they
very
want to
known,
be in it to
that-
just
that
be
is
like in it for
definitely a good
fun.
sign, right?
Right, like
People are, like,
Moby's
just being
in
like-
the background playing your guitar. And
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
like,
Right. The funniest experience of my week was that this very sweet millennial data tester in my
all
company.
fairness, you're a millennial too,
I am technically a millennial too.
but you're at this. You're at the.
I'm at the very end. She was IMing me. I have a question for you, and I'm thinking it's going to be like a work-related question. She's like, oh, can I get the link to your podcast? I'm watching Twin Peaks. I'm thinking like, oh my God, this 22-year-old is watching Twin Peaks. That's amazing. But she's watching it in like an ironic kind of make fun of it way where it's like, they're so 80s. It's so lame. I'm like, nope, I don't think you understand. I legit love
No,
this.
you're lame.
Like, it's
That's
real.
just lame you are.
It's a real thing.
Some woman was like, "Oh, I'm watching Twin Peaks right now at work," and I just popped up out of my cubicle, going like, "Do you want a companion podcast for that? I have one." And she's like, "I think because we're Facebook friends." She's like, "I think it's all your Twin Peaks posts." We're like, "Maybe I should check this
Yeah.
out." And I was like, "You should. It's amazing. Listen to our podcast."
I
so-
think I can appreciate the fact that in an age where everything is binged, everything is instant, on demand, David Lynch is saying, I don't want to do that. I want you to have to put your phone down and pay attention.
And like, in all honesty, it's fucking hard.
It is hard.
So
It is hard. But I found it very worthwhile. I mean, I've discovered things that I don't think I would get out of other series were I not taking copious notes on them. And
in all fairness, we also are taking notes on
Right.
things. Like, we watch the episode for just pure enjoyment to just get a feel.
Correct.
And then we come back and we go, what was the weather on the TV? Because
Oh my God.
we're just going to jot
the
that down.
number
just in
theory.
case.
You know what, Melissa? Can we just say that we'll put a link on our next, like on some post to number theory? I don't even want to get into number theory tonight, but there's so much number theory.
We can do a PowerPoint presentation.
Melissa's
It'll be fun.
gonna, listeners, Melissa and I are gonna
It'll
take
be a
care of you.
one-sheeter.
If you're
For
number
everyone.
theory enthusiasts, we will get you, but we're not going to do it tonight. It's just like too exhausting. This is too much. I don't know whether we're going 2s or 3s anymore.
I think
It's all too much.
He's doing some red
I
herrings
think it's
or
two
like.
Yes,
fives
I
and
agree.
threes.
So
5s I haven't seen. Where do you see
Well,
5s?
because 253 was last episode where it was
Oh, yes, you're right. 253,
time,
yes.
And like a lot of things are divisible by 2, and a lot of things are divisible by 5. So it's just
And obviously
So
3 is... We don't even have
Well,
to talk
3 is
about
the
how
one
3
we
is
have to talk.
giant. But, yeah.
again, Nate, you just need to jot down.
I know, I'm
every number you
afraid
see.
Nate will never speak to us again after this experience. Because
It's
of how weird we are.
what do we
No.
what do we think about Lucy watching Chad pick up the mail?
I thought that
Let me
scene
think.
was
Is she gonna
extremely-
figure it out? Is she gonna get him later on? Is that?
Let me just.
I mean, it seems like she knows she's up to something.
My notes say
Is he gonna-
fucking Chad.
Right. But it was an interesting
Such a
scene
dick.
too, because I also saw when Chad said, I bet you and Andy wake up every morning and say it's a beautiful day. This underlining Chad is jealous of them and their relationship and their love.
And Chad's just a dick too.
Right.
So it's like one of those like, oh, you guys are just so like that's just what you do.
Right. Yeah, and also having Lucy kind of get that intuition nudge. I always love when Lucy gets it right. I've never thought Lucy was unintelligent. If you look at the past seasons, I mean, Lucy, she might be spacey, she might be a little bit eccentric,
yeah,
but I don't
that's-
think she's dumb.
The only thing that has bothered me, and I've said it multiple times, multiple fucking times, is the whole cell phone thing. Like,
I know,
she doesn't
and I don't
understand
but I
the
think
fucking
that
concept of a cell phone, but she has a double monitor at work.
That
People
has
don't
to
just
be
have a double monitor at work.
But
Like,
remember-
request it.
Remember how she could crank out those QED reports?
I mean, it has to be like some
She can
insinuation
online
about
shop,
her being on
she
in the
gets all of
past.
that, but
I
like
don't know.
person walks in with a cell phone and she fucking faints. That's
Yeah.
the only thing that really irks me about where they
I
develop.
agree. That was irksome. It bugged me too.
Are you a Lucy fan, Nate?
I am not a Lucy fan.
How did I know?
Actually,
Not
I
what
will
I
say that when I
anticipated.
first started watching, and I know that they've sort of put them more out of the limelight, but I was like, geez, like of all these characters coming back, I feel like I'm spending a lot of time with Lucy and Andy. Like,
Andy and Lucy.
You know what?
Yeah.
I will agree with you there. I have said that before. I'm like, wow, I never would have expected that we
Yeah.
would have spent
Hey,
so much time
well-
with
Hey,
Lucy
but
and Andy.
good Hawk time. I mean, that's a treat.
mean,
Getting
yeah.
a lot of
Oh
Hawk.
my god.
I
Yeah, we gotta.
thought we were gonna get Big Ed because on IMDb
No Big
he
Ed.
had like 8 episodes before the
Oh.
season started. Now we haven't seen any Big
what was
Ed.
it, just on the set the whole time? Like,
I don't
watching
know.
the film?
Yeah,
Unless
oh
he's
my
in-
God. We
unless
know
he's
he's
in the
there.
last
He was
8
in the. He
episodes.
was in the.
Right, but we would know.
Was he in?
Well,
was he-
no. But the Entertainment Weekly cover about the Twin Peaks return had Machen Amick, it had Norma,
James.
it had Audrey, it had James, it had Big Ed, Kyle MacLachlan, and Nadine. Those were the people that were in the cover as though, like, this is Twin Peaks, like, these people are definitely coming back. And of those people, we've seen everyone but
Except
fucking
for
Audrey and Ed. Which is...
And Ed, right.
Right.
Right,
Ed,
because we don't
man.
understand where Ed is, or now that we have like a backstory of Nadine, though.
Right.
So we
Is
know
Ed with Nadine or with Norma?
Right.
Well, I
We're
think
still
Ed's with
wondering.
Nadine. And you can see
Yeah.
with Nadine that she has an office.
Right.
Her clothes are nicer.
So
I mean,
they've-
she's made money.
they've
Her thing has...
established
Yeah.
that Nadine's like, hey, what's
Her
up?
drape runners
I'm
have
doing stuff.
succeeded.
Well, they had that big house, like in that
Right.
urban area, and they were keeping all those people in the basement.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, you haven't seen what is that? Children Under the Stairs?
No, I've seen that.
People Under the Stairs.
I was
That is
like,
Norma
that was
and
theirs.
Big Ed.
yeah, I was
Both
in
in
Right,
that.
they
or
were
seventh
both in that,
grade.
yes.
Mama.
I was at my best friend's
I knew
house.
what you were talking about,
who
but I was
had
like, I'm
a
going to let this
weird-
continue.
Oh my god. Shit. No, I've seen that movie, but I was very young and I was at
It's
a
disturbing.
sleepover.
I saw that
With
movie at a sleepover also. I think everybody
with
saw that movie at a
someone.
sleepover.
We were in the basement where it was like, oh, the staircase was like the laundry room.
Right.
So like, I've never been in the laundry room. I've been best friends with this person for 30 years, but I've never been in that room. So it's like, well, shit, I'm gonna get murdered.
You know what would be
tonight.
really nice to do? We should post Nate's top 5 like B horror movies on our. That would be really fun for our listeners. I think you guys would appreciate that. Speaking of miscommunications, I had the craziest one with my friend Alyssa, who is a listener, I hope, of the podcast today.
Should be.
When she texted me asking me if I liked Bush. And I assumed she meant George W. Bush. So I responded, haha, no. And then she was like, I can see where you're coming from. And I was like, I mean, but now in comparison, he seems great. And then she was like, I mean, the older albums were like, and then I read like her next 6 text messages and I was like, wait, do you mean Bush the band?
Who doesn't love some Gavin Rossdale?
I know.
I just listen to, so here's a fun thing about Big Brother. Like, he's always watching you. And like,
Yep.
somehow
I
the
kind of
universe
semi-work
knows
for
it's been 1 week since I've broken up with
CIA agent.
Tom.
No.
And I've gotten Facebook messages on all the dating apps. Like, hey, do you want to like this app? Match.com. 2, I was like scrolling through my like, what do I want to listen to now? Apple Music. And it's like the X playlist. And I was like, what the fuck?
I made you a playlist called The Return of Lady Power.
No, that one I love, but the higher powers were like, do you want to listen to this? Like,
Right. Higher powers
You're gonna
fucking
get-
suck.
you're gonna, and it's really, really creepy. It's
I
really
know.
creepy.
It knows.
It always fucking knows.
Guys, I have 3 more talking points that I want to address, and I'm going to share what they are so we can go to them. It is
We have a bunch. Yes.
Ben's secret sadness.
Love Ben's Secret Sadness.
Ben's secret sadness. That's like my newest segment. Ben's secret sadness. So everyone thought I was crazy, but I have maintained from several episodes ago that Ben Horne had a secret sadness. There's something about him that's not right. He's upset. And others in this room, Pat and Melissa, have said it's just based on him aging 25 years. I think it's based on the anguish that comes from having a rape baby grandchild who is pure evil.
I like to believe that Lynch does more than just rape babies. That sounds weird, but you know what I'm
David
saying.
Lynch, if you're listening, we're really sorry about that last statement. It's not how the rest
Rape
of us feel. That's
coma
just
babies.
Melissa and none of
And
us.
a lot of wine.
Right,
So-
no, rape coma babies are absolutely what Richard is. No one else could be 90 pounds and have that kind of superhuman strength and weird eyebrows and kind of look like he's about to metamorphosize into a jackrabbit like Richard Horne could.
Yeah, he really needs some nose bone.
Does.
But
He
that's
really
besides
looks like
that.
he's about to turn into a rabbit every moment. I think
He
he's
does
just about to
kind of.
sprout
Yeah.
ears and like
got
extend
an
his
alien-
It's
mandible.
because of the nose. The nose doesn't have a outward.
Again,
moment.
Joanna DeRay, congrats. I'd love to send you a bottle of
Good work.
champagne.
Way to go.
How you found this person who is legitimately like, this kid is the best for this role, that there's no one who would be better for this part. Like, he's absolutely perfect in every way. Congratulations, Joanna, you found him. And even in the interview, I loved this. So I read a vulture.com interview. I love to cite my sources like a polite young moderator. Eamon Farron said that they were like, oh, did you have an audition? He's like, oh, no, it was more like a phone call. And we've frequently talked about David Lynch's casting methodology is just to kind of meet with and chit-chat with his actors. And what I now realize is the genius of Joanna DeRay is that she knows that's his methodology. So she's like, I better get it fucking right the first time.
Right.
Because he's going to love anyone I bring him.
Take the face and put it in the role.
Yeah, so I better literally find the perfect person for this role, which is super specific. Embodiment of evil. Looks a little bit like Sherilyn Fenn. 95 pounds. Go for it. You know, like, okay, there's one person on the earth who fits that description, and she found him.
He's pretty great, though.
He's pretty perfect. I mean, that's amazing. So she deserves some kudos, because sometimes it's just bringing the right person into the room, and that's half the battle. And like, people don't realize that.
And
So
continue.
I
Sorry.
guess he's gonna probably flee Twin Peaks and.
Right.
Or try to.
Yeah, we haven't talked about the scene, because I think we've
Right,
just
and
sort of
that's what
been like, I don't even know how to start.
When I was watching this,
It's tough.
one thing that broke my heart and went scene was when he showed up. We see Johnny tied to a chair.
My God.
I mean, I get it because you just ran into a wall and you like really fractured your body. But maybe you shouldn't tie him to a chair. Maybe you should get some outside help. Whatever.
Yeah.
But then here comes Richard tearing through.
Yeah,
Sylvia?
Which
Horne?
Yes.
this
Sylvia
is
Horne.
the
Correct, yeah.
actress
Yeah.
from Twin
Same
Peaks.
actress, yeah.
And you know what? Who knew? I mean, because this is the biggest scene she's had in all three seasons. Sylvia, congratulations. I thought you did a phenomenal job. It was well worth waiting for. I mean, that was a 25-year wait for a great scene.
She was like in the first episode of season
she's
1
had
and the last episode of season 2.
7.5 lines in total in Twin Peaks season 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And in this season, I think you could say this scene, I feel like so far the scenes that I would say are like pivotal are, you know, the Diane Evil Cooper interview scene and this scene. I mean, these are the biggest. This is where we definitively learn that Richard is the grandson. So, I mean, logically, if you're just science, biology, he has to be the child of Johnny or Audrey Horne.
Correct.
So we know that it's very highly unlikely that he's Johnny's son.
I just want to mention that Johnny, in the first season, so this is the third.
This is the third Johnny.
The third Johnny, by the way.
Yeah.
Is it different
But
Johnny?
in the first
Different
two
Johnnies
seasons,
all the time.
he looks like a member of Pearl Jam, basically.
He looks like
he's
Johnny
just
Depp
like-
from Benny and June.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
he's wearing like a whimsical hat with like curly hair, like doing like magic tricks.
Hey,
And then
he's
all of a
really
sudden,
attractive that first season.
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Remember when in our podcast I was like, so I wanted to reveal the note that Johnny is hot, because like all of a sudden he's hot.
Oh, you
Second
did say
season,
that,
he was
didn't
in
you?
The Indian headdress.
right.
Was that like the spiritual phase?
I
when he
don't
was-
know.
Just trying to shoot
Well, so I have a
That's
theory.
when Ben was a Civil War general.
Oh,
Right,
Robert
he was
E.
Robert E.
Right.
Lee.
Robert
fair.
E.
Everyone will recall
And
that.
then also Ben was
important
like,
time.
well,
Yes.
you know who's not gonna take over this empire? Johnny.
Yes.
Johnny is
Right.
He
And
was
he's like,
finally
and
"Oh,
Audrey does her
fine."
famous, "I'm your man, Daddy," and shakes his hand.
Yeah.
So I think this. So I have this whole. I'm going to start a segment, listeners, called "The Secret Sadness of Ben." What is the secret sadness of Ben? Why is he so sad? There's a lot of reasons for him to be sad. So it could be many things. We learned this episode. I think it's a pretty strong indicator that him and Sylvia are divorced.
Or separated.
Separated. The way she talks to him, asking him for money, feels like a couple that's not together.
It feels like they're not
Yeah,
together, but there's some kind of infinite where if they were divorced, she wouldn't be going to him in the first place.
Right.
So that's a big thing. Where
Right.
He's definitely like, he's obviously like.
So there's that.
Taking care or like.
But
paying-
I know Richard
Whatever.
Beamer. I think
I don't know.
he has the joie de vivre that if they wanted us to feel like Ben was Ben from the start, he would have been Ben.
But I,
But instead,
And-
he's been a subdued Ben.
yeah, I
Which
don't
is
think
why I
he's-
don't think they're divorced. Why I think
Yeah.
they're more separated.
Separated.
Because it's not like
Quite clear
hey,
what
like,
the moral.
I'm single and mingling.
Yeah.
So Beverly, let's do dinner.
Right.
Like,
So this
fuck
episode,
this.
Ben asks Beverly to dinner after several episodes of just flirting.
Yeah.
It's a big moment, and I do find it interesting too that when he calls her, he says right away, "Is Johnny okay?" and doesn't really worry about her.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
that causes a thing.
And then he asks about the money, which I think
also
is
why I think that they're separated and not
Right.
divorced, because she makes a big fuss about
exactly. You're right.
Where
If they
it's
were
like, if
divorced,
they were
you'd be like,
divorced,
well, then
like-
why would you?
that. Yeah,
You're
like,
right.
Fuck you.
So I think the secret sadness of Ben was the loss of Audrey in some form, because right before where we are in the series at the end of Twin Peaks, Audrey and Ben are in fantastic shape. They've reconciled. He trusts her with the business. They're close. They are communicative. Everything's great with them. And in fact, she's on an errand of his when she goes and gets blown up by the bank. So I think, A, he blames himself for her coma and subsequent, whatever that means, which I think we'll see.
Which you think is Richard, the devil baby.
Right? Or just her having, I mean, who knows what state Audrey will be in when we see her. I'm still not convinced that Audrey will be a full functioning human when we see her in the series. Like, I think she could be a
we
Black
don't know
Lodge
now.
dweller. She could be in a coma. She could be severely burned. Like, a lot of things could be with Audrey,
Have you ever seen Boxing Helena?
which is with Sherilyn Fenn. I have not
She
seen
has
it.
like no arms and legs in it. At the
No shit.
David Lynch loves her. I mean, like, I knew she's gonna be in this series for at least a couple episodes. She's a darling of his, and he's held off on her for a while. But I'm more and more thinking, like, we're not gonna see the pretty, sweet Audrey that would pair with Cooper and get a happy ending with Cooper like we would wish. Like that, there's no way we're gonna get that.
Nope.
And I think the secret sadness of Ben has a lot to do with I just finally got her back, and now I lost my daughter.
I know.
You know, and so I think, and with Richard, it's just a reminder all the time of like how he failed Audrey, how he didn't protect her, how he let this happen. You know, it's like a constant failure smack. And so I think that's where it's like, Richard is like the shame of Ben Horne, and we're going to learn more and more about that.
I know. I'm still holding out hope that Richard is not Audrey's child.
But then who could she possibly be? I mean, like, legitimately, then he's Johnny's child, which is equally horrible.
Yeah, but it's because one of the things about that scene where, like, Richard comes in and starts cursing at Mrs. Horne was, first off, if you see your degenerate grandson who's obviously high all the time, you lock the door, you call
Well,
the
she
cops.
said, "Don't you
not
come
out."
in here." She tried.
Right, but you don't go outside. That's the thing. But again,
Right.
I had this
But when you're an enabler for a family member, it's a different story. I mean,
and this is a big
Yeah.
thing of living in the city versus like how in episode 8, which you didn't see, someone comes up to the car and is like, got a light? And as a city dweller, I roll up my window,
It's a great
I just
scene.
shake my head, like,
Right.
I'm not going to make eye contact with you, you do not come near my car,
Right.
thanks, but no thanks. It's the same thing where someone knocks on my door. We were just talking about this, you do the like slow crawl to the door. You're like, who is this? You look out the window, you keep the door locked, and you're like, I'm not gonna open the door till someone comes in. Like, you are calling the cops. Like, that's
I
the
agree.
one thing
No,
that
I
really
know.
angers me is that she just comes to the door all furious, like, you're not gonna come in.
but I think
It's like-
because
And
he's
she
in the
like
same.
ran out too.
Yeah,
She was like
and I was
out
like,
on the,
no,
off the porch.
maybe you should
and-
just like look out the window and be like,
Right.
like I'm locking all
okay,
these doors.
So, theory fans. So, that is very similar to the reaction that Miriam had when he came to her trailer. We could question, why did Miriam... I mean, she didn't really fight him coming in. It was more of a like, oh, Richard, don't do that.
But in all
Wait,
fairness,
Miriam?
like
No, Miriam had the
Miriam's-
door locked.
She had the door locked. He like
he did?
He
She
needed
just had a screen door,
and
so
then
it's not
okay.
like-
yeah, he
Yeah.
needed and then opened it, and that's
Yeah.
how she came in.
But I think
because she was just like,
I believe
here's
that.
the closed
You're right.
door.
You're
And
right.
I'm like, no, you don't.
Yeah.
But I think
Which is
both
the same
of the
thing
interactions.
as, like, if you just open a window or
Right.
like pull
Fair,
back the
fair,
shades
fair, fair.
and are like, fuck no, kid. And then he could break in. But
Right.
Then it's,
Miriam's problem was that she told him what she did.
I know, that was so
That
stupid.
was-
But I
you
do
could
think,
have left the letter to the sheriff out of it, Miriam.
I mean, what we're going to have in the next couple episodes, we're going to have it, is some sort of sympathy building or origin story around Richard. Because it just,
Or
it
we're
only
just
makes
meant
sense.
to hate him.
I don't know, because the Miriam interaction, even the Sylvia interaction, leading me to believe that they had previous relationships with him that were...
And had hope.
and had hope that
Yeah.
he could be turned.
Yeah, all
So-
babies look really innocent. until they
Right.
become
So
the devil.
I exactly. And I think that
I'm not a
story
big fan of them.
has to happen. And I think it
Well,
has to
it's gonna
happen through Audrey. And that's why I'm like, I texted you and I was like, Melissa, I'm so seriously angry right now. Where the fuck is Audrey? Like, at this point, it's become... It's
You're not
become
alone in
absurd.
that.
I know. Everyone's wondering where's Audrey, and that's why. So one thing, and I try not to quote interviews, but in the Eamon Farron interview at Vulture.com, of course, as anyone would, because you have an opportunity to interview him, you're going to do this. They asked him what he felt about the theories that his parentage was Evil Cooper and Audrey. And he said, don't assume anything, don't assume anything.
Well,
And that makes me think, like, yeah, of course. Because right now, the literally most logical option is that Audrey was raped by Evil Coop, and that's who Richard is. Or that it's Audrey and John Justice Wheeler's son, which really doesn't seem
Billy
like the
Zane.
most...
Billy Zane.
Doesn't
they couldn't get him. They couldn't get
Yeah,
him.
doesn't seem like the most powerful
He's doing
choice.
this ABC
Yeah.
Family series right now where he plays a lawyer. It's now freeform.
Are you serious?
He's gained a lot of weight.
No way.
Love you. I'm Billy
He's
Zane.
adorbs.
No, like I started
Jeez.
watching this, I was like, a murder mystery series on ABC Family right up my alley. Then I was like, this is boring. And then I was like, is that Billy Zane?
No way.
No, I don't recognize him
Oh, that's
because
sad.
he's gained like a good chunk of weight.
Wow.
And so then it's just me on IMDb like I am whenever I start a series. Like,
You think he's Vincent D'Onofrio or something from... from what was
Daredevil?
it? The Daredevil,
Yeah.
series.
I do,
Yes.
like, right now, I see Richard Horne as he is Chekhov's gun. He's loaded and ready to go off. We're gonna get some sort of major payoff plot-wise.
Well, I think he's gone off a few times.
Yes, this is true.
yeah, he's just murdering and doing coke like no business.
Right.
Doesn't bode well for his future.
In sweeter news, Albert and Candace are an adorable couple.
Oh, yeah.
Continuing on, I do love the scene, and I love that Gordon and Tammy are watching them
It's the
going,
only scene where I
Oh,
could
it's so
kind of
sweet.
stand
It's
sweet. It's so
stand
sweet.
Sweet.
Tammy. Because she
And-
was just like, they were both giggling about it.
Yeah, it was very sweet, and it felt to me like David Lynch's relationship with Christabel. Like, he's like older friend and his young, hot, sexy friend that he
Yeah,
wants
he
to
likes
fuck, but
her.
also mentors. And they're just talking about how sweet it is that Albert wants to date Candace. It's adorable.
And then Gordon is drawing some drawings in his little
so
hotel.
cute.
Some like
Gordon
Oh,
is
yeah.
just stolen my
yeah.
heart.
This
Like,
is where,
I love
like,
Gordon.
the plot points come in that we need to pay attention to because the episode is called Laura is the One.
Laura's the one, and Gordon
Right.
has a vision
Yeah,
of
we haven't
Laura.
even talked about that. And we know it's from Fire Walk with Me because of bangs and or logic.
Here's the best story of the evening is there's this flash of Laura and Kelly just goes, look at her bangs. That is Fire Walk with Me. And just Pat goes, she's alive, so it has to be Fire Walk with Me because
Right.
Laura is dead all through Twin Peaks.
Right, because we don't see the murder in
We don't see the murder
series.
in the
We see
series.
it, we just see it in the.
So
We see Maddie's murder in the series.
So it also really brings forth how
Black.
Kelly goes really in depth. Then Pat's just like, or if we just look at the broad picture of this, we've never seen a live Maddie in Twin Peaks.
Right.
It's just easier. that
Listeners, we all know what it's like to sit there and analyze Cheryl Lee's bangs. We've all been there.
Because then she's screaming, and then we do hear Sarah Palmer, which I really suggest listening to this with the captions on.
Ugh, the Fire Stick,
Screaming.
Amazon, is the best.
Screaming Laura.
Sponsored by Fire Stick. They don't know it yet, but we are.
So we know that, and then this is also, so he opens the door, sees Laura, but then he also, so who's really standing there is Albert being like, let's chat because Diane's doing some shady shit on the side.
Yes. This blew me away.
I thought it was because of the last episode where we saw Diane, where she was mansplayed and then like texting, and then we know that she said something. She got the text about
They
the
have
dinner.
Hastings. They're going to take him to the site, is
Right.
what she texts back to Evil Cooper. But it's heavily encrypted.
Right. But I think Albert's also being a little sarcastic there, where it's
Right.
like,
So the site is
Hey.
obviously
The
black-
sycamore trees.
Or-
Glastonbury Grove.
or just the Black Lodge, or
Or
the
the-
Red
yeah,
Room
exactly.
In general.
But
Whatever
I mean,
the-
that threw me for
see,
a curve.
and I took it as more of something a little more, because he sings this, what's his face?
Bill Hastings
Bill
from
Hastings.
Scream.
Hastings
From Scream.
from Scream. Matthew Lillard.
Lillard.
That's it. Yes.
Yep.
Matthew Lillard.
Doing a great job, by the way, Matthew Lillard. I think this was a great role for you.
I really
And
hated
they're
his
taking
crying
him to
scene.
the
But I
Site,
thought it
which-
was great.
I thought it was just their website, like where
Right.
his website is telling them all
No,
about
the zone.
Oh,
the
did
site.
you go to that website? They
We
have
both
it?
did.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, Melissa
Duh.
found it and sent me
Well,
the
because
links.
of all of my sweet Twitterness, I found that it's
Melissa's our social media entrepreneur guru.
I'm trying. If anyone's hiring, I have some
She knows
experience.
SEO, SEM, SER, SE Zebra, Zigzag, Rowboat, and Cauliflower.
But take him to the site. I either thought it meant the actual website of theirs, where it was just more simple, where it's like, no, like legit, like Major Briggs disappearance, like this is how. I didn't go in depth of like the sycamore trees or anything like that, where I thought it was more surface level, where it's like they have this dude,
Right.
they have his site, he had some insight, they're gonna go there, like just so you know, like this is what's
Right.
happening. And I thought it was more farm related than
Right.
Twin Peaks related.
Well, because he wouldn't have the big picture that we have. I think a
Right.
lot of. I've always thought duality is a big theme in Twin Peaks.
I mean, all of the brothers and all of the
yes,
there's
there's a lot of brothers.
and even where it's like the Trumans,
Right,
are
the
your
Truman brothers are your
Mm.
true brothers.
right. There's a
Yeah.
lot
Yeah.
of brothers that multiplied by 3.
Right.
2.
3s and 2s are
Yeah.
huge.
Pay attention. Nate.
I see it.
It's a
It's
lot.
yeah.
You gotta just get into this mindset.
I know, and it's so yeah, absolutely. But amazing stuff. You know what we haven't talked about? So we talked about Albert and Candace, Duncan and Roger. So things are kind of coming to a head with Duncan and Roger. They are.
Can I jump back to the Diane conversation?
Oh yes,
though?
yes. Go ahead.
So before we leave the Diane thing, Gordon said that he felt it when he hugged her, and
She was
to
holding
keep her
something
close.
back.
Because
Yeah,
it was
that
like
was a
he,
painful
like-
moment.
He knew, and then Tammy comes in with her weird hip walk, which I fucking hate.
I know.
And then, hey, this is something, and it's bad Coop with
Right.
the black box in New York before going back to episode 1.
You know,
2.
thinking back on like the other, now I'm starting to see a picture here. So last episode and the episode before, I thought the pattern was post-traumatic stress, and now I'm seeing abuse as the pattern, and kind of a combination of abuse, post-traumatic stress, because Diane with evil Coop, and like why she would still be responding to evil Coop, it's like Patty Hearst syndrome. You know, it's like this. I have always believed that Diane was in love with Coop. And I think we could even get that from his side, which is amazing. Like,
he was her work husband.
Right.
Where it's just like,
Oh,
we have
that's
this
so true.
connection. Where it's like,
Diane, remind me to tell you about this other girl that I'm into besides you. Like, it's just so rough. She's the Gal Friday trope. She's like, he's the detective, and she's the like, Dex, why can't you ever see me before your eyes?
Right.
You know, like, it's that Maltese Falcon thing. It's there. And I think what is really amazing about Laura Dern's performance, and I hope she would be on my list of like who I would hope would get nominated for an Emmy, is that she takes a character that is already iconic before she even does one thing. Because Twin Peaks fans love Diane. I mean, before Diane even walked into the room, she was a major character. She's a major part of Cooper. She's us, arguably, in Twin Peaks. I mean, he's like recording files to us to talk about.
we're sitting next to each other while we're hearing Coop say the things he needs.
And we can put all of our stuff onto Diane. And the choice to bring her in is very brave, because you have to pick someone who is just incredible. And she really brings this like nuanced, intense, strong performance that I just love. I think a lot of fans are going to be angry that she's been sort of supporting evil Coop on the sidelines. They're going to see it as a sign of weakness, which I agree, but I think it's a real picture of what a victim would look like. I mean, she is in love with him. She was raped by him.
A victim
role
where it's like blackmail. It's like all of that.
She's like, I'd rather have some connection with you than no connection with you. And that means that I'll respond to your, requests.
And it's even, I want to maintain some element of control.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have to do this, it's going to be on my terms.
And what's
if
ironic,
you text me, I'm going to text you what
right?
I know, but
that's true. It could be just a totally,
because it's also, she has all these boyfriends, quote unquote, and
right?
But is she like kind of a prostitute or an escort?
I don't think she is. I think she's just sort of.
I feel like that hair doesn't scream not prostitute or escort. It's too blonde.
I mean, that is interesting. It could be that she is just sort of like living life in the moment and responding.
And I think she has a victimist background, but I think it's also like her trying to maintain some kind of, I'm strong, so I'm trying to hold on to this.
And with Gordon and Albert, she hates the FBI. And I think she hates the FBI because of how the FBI lost Coop. Like how they failed Cooper.
And then intern her.
Because
that was her assignment,
her love.
too.
Yeah. And her life. And she knows probably as much about the case as any other character, which is why I think it's interesting that he says, this would interest you, Diane. This was the Blue Rose case. And she says the Blue Rose case. So we know that Diane probably has as much interest and as much knowledge as Cooper on this case. And she's about to be brought onto the scene. And I think that's interesting. And I hope that she continues to be the most central female character, because for me she's the most, bar none, the female character that I'm the most interested in watching.
Right. She brings a presence where you're intrigued, you want to root for her, but then like when she starts doing the shitty stuff, you're like, why are you doing that?
Right.
Not like, fuck you, Diane. It's more like, But why?
It shows
Don't
you.
Wanna,
I mean,
you want to connect with her in some way,
right?
Which is, it's good acting in that.
It is, and it
part.
shows you the cost that Cooper's absence had on other lives, which we don't really see through anyone but her. Other than Diane, there's no repercussions for this person disappearing for 25 years. And now through Diane, we're seeing how that ruined lives and that ruined her career and that made her cynical and it drove her into all these other bad habits that we see that she has. So I think also that Albert and Cole have a real fondness for Diane and a real desire to protect her. And that sort of tempers whatever they would be doing to try and drive her into a more active role finding Cooper. That they're, they care about her, which gets in the way. It really does.
But they're also suspicious of her.
They are,
They want to keep her close, so they're going to do that in a more cynical way, I feel like. And then, can we talk about Hawk?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I took a deep breath because I'm like, it's hard to talk about. All the Log Lady scenes, I have to say, have been really, really hard. This actress is a beloved Twin Peaks favorite, and she passed away before these series, was released. Yeah. And it's very well known that these were her last pieces of footage, and they really feel that way. And one thing that, as I've been reading more and more about David Lynch and about Twin Peaks, I have this theory that I've shared with the group about Lynch portal theory, that all of the Lynch movies are kind of tied together by these different portals. And I really think Twin Peaks is kind of the central piece of that, and it's where everything comes together. And what's interesting is his cast and crew that he consistently returns to is really the Twin Peaks cast and crew. I love that in this series, the opening credits are line operator. It's all of his crew that's been with him forever, giving them credit. It's like everyone's swan song. And then to have this actress's literal swan song be this role that's so poetic, and to have her do it with someone who knew her when she was young, it's just so rough. These scenes are very rough.
It's like she has such spiritual
so beautiful.
insight.
She's
where
beautiful.
It's just Hawk's just all right, I'm just gonna jot this down, take this to my boss, and just be like, I'm gonna go with this because electricity is humming.
It's so gorgeous.
I can't.
But he's dying now.
Yeah.
The glow is dying.
But in these days, the glow is dying. I thought that was such a powerful line, and it speaks so much to I think a big piece of what David Lynch is trying to say and accomplish with this series is this idea of slowing down and being in the moment, and experiencing life in the moment. And I think he really rails against the society we live in that's so instant gratification and everything on your phones and everything being multitasking. And the Log Lady is really kind of the spokesperson for being, in the moment and slowed down and TM-esque. There's a lot of TM stuff in this one. And transcendental meditation.
And then I
Always
also
with
think
David
it's
Lynch.
just there's a little bit of portal in there where it's
So much
electricity is humming. It's that's when we are staring
could
at.
get sucked into your electrical socket.
Right, anytime.
Is there a humming sound when we're staring at those electrical sockets?
I thought I heard some earlier, and I
always text Melissa. This is weird. This week I've had 3 times where I looked and saw 3:33. When I randomly looked at the clock, come on, that's a thing. Am I going to be sucked into the portal tomorrow?
My boss today was like, well, have you looked in the portal? I was like, do you want to talk about portal theory? Because I can do that. She's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I was like, Twin Peaks portal theory? She's like, I don't, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about this data entry thing.
No one knows.
Where we need to retrieve this. And I was like, I don't.
What have I been doing all week?
Is it in
Let
this
me know.
portal?
let me know.
Guys, what have I been doing
Threes are
all
a
week?
big deal, Kate.
Portal demos. It's all coming together. Yeah, threes are a big deal. Yeah, absolutely. So the other log lady line that I think is so beautiful and Twin Peaks fans are going to freak out about, she says, the Truman brothers are both true. And the others, the good ones who have been with you, now the circle is almost complete. And I just was like, oh God. The others, the good ones who have been with you is Lucy, it's Andy, it's Cooper, it's the old Twin Peaks cast, to my thinking.
Listen to the dreams of the time and the space.
Yeah.
Right, even Bobby. I love, there is one of the small glimmer threads in Twin Peaks that I always appreciated, despite all the darkness of like abuse and drugs and incest and all these other things.
A lot of murder. A
Murder.
lot of murder.
There was a thin redemptive thread always in certain characters that did become better. And I think part of the reason I liked Audrey so much is she is one of the characters who you can map her trajectory and see that until she got blown up, she became better. I mean, she, really went down a bad path and then she plummeted and then she rose.
Right.
And she became better than what she was. And same with Ben. Like, Ben had an arc and a trajectory and became better. And a lot of those characters really did become better people. But in this season, it's a lot harder to find those redemptive characters. And so when the log lady says this about the good ones who have been with you, it really resonates with a Twin Peaks fan because you're like, she means the old cast. I mean, she's talking about the nostalgic old cast. She has to be. And it's very lovely and it's very sweet. And I wonder, too, when she says the circle's almost complete, who they're missing from the circle. Because they have...
Probably Coops.
Yeah,
Like
I guess.
regular Coop.
Right, because that was the
they're
formal...
trying to find... Because Lovely has always been like...
Hawk and Harry
Right.
and Cooper
He's
and
like,
Lucy and
hey,
Auntie.
look for this guy.
Yeah.
So the only other thing was the Casino Brothers is the only thing that we really didn't touch on. Like, we talked about Candy, but we didn't talk about how basically...
Oh, yes. Randy
I mean,
and...
it's basically... There's a hit on Dougie Coop because Mr. Jones is really... The Mr. Jones is Mr. Jones.
Mr. Jackpot.
Well, and we know that
Yeah.
evil Coop
But isn't
wants...
like being with the Joneses, like that's a thing, right?
Oh.
Keeping
I thought
up
it
with
was like
the
a
Joneses.
pun.
Keeping up with the Joneses.
It's like our Mr. Jones
Yeah.
is our Mr. Jones.
Yeah, exactly. Trying to keep up with the Joneses is like keeping up with the trends and the times and things like that. But I think, yeah.
Yeah, and so...
They're pinning it on Dougie to try and get... Because I think ultimately what it comes down to is that Duncan doesn't want to actually pull the trigger and he wants to like outsource his kill. And that's what it comes down to. But this episode does make us see the like sphere of influence that evil Coop has. That he can put hits on people.
And it connects the Las Vegas office with Tony and the insurance office. So like we have...
I mean, we knew Tony was bad.
Where it was like, we knew Tony was bad, but we didn't know he was like in part of this.
Like truly bad.
And then we also discussed how if you're gonna do hard drugs, it's gonna fuck with your face. Like, it's gonna hurt whatever people are seeing.
Yeah,
because
I've been trying to like Belushi. I think he's good in the role. I do.
Well, and I'm talking about Tom
Size.
Oh, I went there. Sorry, guys. Whoops.
I mean,
that's just Belushi's natural.
I was like,
Actually, I think Belushi looks okay because not that he looks great, but that he just used to look so much worse.
Oh, little fun
I
fact.
assumed you guys were talking about Belushi.
Little fun fact about Jim Belushi. My dad graduated high school with him.
What?
Yes, and they went to a reunion maybe like 10 years ago. It was like the 30th year reunion or 40. I don't know what reunion it was, but They said, my mom and dad said that everyone was loving Belushi at the reunion.
Of course, I'm
you know?
sure.
But obviously, but like, I guess he was charming still.
I mean, he's
I
a
don't know,
sweet,
whatever.
he's just not.
He's not John Belushi though. That's for sure.
Right, and it's like, he had that weird sitcom like Jim Belushi. I think that was like the sitcom.
Life
where
with Jim or something?
Yeah, where it's like, oh, you can play that like suburban dad really well, but like a mob boss, it's like...
Well, with some of these
It's hard to
celebrity guest appearances, the thing with casting a celebrity is you're bringing an awareness of their former roles and baggage into the role.
What they're known for is instantly projected on that character.
And so you're making the choice.
Eloquent way of saying that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Fortunately, like Jim Belushi, like wasn't in anything that anybody remembers. I remember Curly Sue.
K9.
K9. There you go.
Who didn't remember Curly Sue?
Amazing movie. And it's not that I think, someone else should play the role. I just, every time I see him, it's Jim Belushi, and I'm taken out of the story.
The guy who plays his brother plays, like, the criminal in, like, any, like, BTV series that you've ever seen.
Which is perfect.
They are, like, comedy relief, too. So.
They are.
Right. And it's more like, oh, here's my, like... Also, I think it's, like, just, like, the two of them together, where it's, like, here's my sinister brother, and here's me going, don't fire Candy, she has nowhere to go.
It was pretty funny, though, when they were getting, like, all, like, impatient when she was pointing at the walls. And what do you think she was saying, too? Because she talked about the weather, which was on TV, so... that was like a nod that, she was just like regurgitating something she saw.
She said some interesting stuff, actually. So I thought she was pointing out the cameras in the area. What were you going to say, Melissa?
I just thought it wasn't just the weather. I think like she was trying to like convey something to them.
Right. So I've got some Candy theory. I'm glad you mentioned this. So Candy is indicating around the room, letting Tony know about something, and I thought it was like they're watching us. Kind of, here's the camera, and here's the camera, and there's a camera right there. But then later, she says, when they say, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "That we're in the version layer," as though it's a totally conversational thing. But I'm like, we've never heard about that. Like, we've never heard about the version layer. What does that mean? And I felt like it's a version of Cooper that they're in a layer of, because...
I thought it was a little red room theory.
Yes. There's something that I think something happened with Candy where she suddenly has more insight or deeper knowledge, and she's trying to kind of process it, and it's not really working, and so that's why she's seeming so out of it and saying weird things. In the really conversational way, she says, well, that's because we're in the version layer, and, further to me indicates that like she's like in the red room in at least 65% part,
and that could be why she's so independent of the other pink
girls, and why she's
like
got the like air current thing with her hand,
because one of the things when you're watching it, you're like, well, why doesn't he just fucking promote one of the other girls that is standing there? Like,
no, Candy.
What about Mandy? Mandy can go get this dude, but Candy really has to? Like, they force Candy to.
It's like Laura. Candy is special. She's the special one. She's the one of the three who's the most special. And I think that's the thing with, like, this episode is all about Laura is the one. And that really has always to me been like Laura's just, if you look at the series initially in the pilot,
she's a murder victim.
It's a procedural, right? Like it's a typical procedural where it's a high school,
that we're used to now, but we weren't used to maybe in the 90s, where it's like, oh, here's the dead body, we're gonna go backwards now.
But they're really doing more than that, and they're trying to kind of hinge this whole universe around this woman.
Because in this episode that you missed, Nate, you should probably really watch
this
really random. Like, they let out the prom picture of Laura
50
years later. like 50 years prior to her even being born, where it's like, go Laura.
Yeah, and it
We
does.
don't have any other pictures of you.
Go to
so
Earth and save.
Well, I mean, always my favorite characters in sci-fi and
just absorb
fantasy
all
are
the evilness.
like the everyman. You know, I love Frodo. I've always related to Frodo because he's just a typical hobbit, but is the everyman who goes on a quest. You know?
Mm-hmm.
But he becomes something extraordinary. And so that's Laura. She's nothing necessarily inherently special, but she has special worth based on...
She takes all the raping from Bob.
Yes. So...
Which is how we should end this podcast.
Yes.
That's a good note.
Oh, the final thing I want to talk about. The very last scene, we get a lovely, my favorite Bang Bang Bar performance to date from Rebecca Del Rio, who is also the singer in Mulholland Drive. Beautiful voice and a very haunting, different voice than you'd ever.
As someone who hasn't seen Mulholland Drive, like,
oh my god, it's amazing!
Like something where I was like I was Googling the lyrics to make sure I knew who it was because I bought
It's
mine
beautiful.
off of iTunes and I don't have the Fires. On the Fire Stick, so
Beautiful, and I love that it was the full song, and much like in Mulholland Drive, that scene in Mulholland Drive, it's totally a cappella. She just belts out this beautiful
is it
song.
the same song?
It's a different song, but her voice is so powerful. She has something very special about her. She looks a little bit Audrey-esque. There's no denying that. She's got a mole. She's got dark hair.
She has a
Red
chevron
lips.
dress.
Yeah, chevron
and
dress.
red nail polish. So she's
Standing
really,
in front of a red curtain, just belting her little heart out. And I think it's
with Moby in the background.
With Moby in the background. Great song.
Right.
Beautiful scene. And we're hoping, David Lynch, I say this every week, but maybe you're not listening. Maybe. That Audrey will be in the next episode at least. I don't know.
Who knows?
Who knows? Meanwhile,